Welcome to the Authentically Successful Show. I'm Carol Schultz, founder and CEO of Vertical Elevation, a talent equity and leadership coaching and advisory firm. Listen at the end of the show for information about becoming my next guest on one of the most important podcasts for building thriving companies. Here we go. My guest today is Daniel Freedman, co-founder and co-CEO of Burnalong, an online video and social motivation platform that works with companies, cities, universities, hospitals, and insurers to help people achieve their health goals and overcome health and wellness challenges. Inc. magazine has described Burnalong as pioneering a new approach to wellness that actually sticks. They bring online what works for people in person. Burnalong has clients in over 70 countries. Prior to founding Burnalong, Daniel spent time as a journalist with the Wall Street Journal, as a speechwriter for Senator Joe Lieberman, and a columnist for Forbes. Additionally, he's held senior roles at the United Nations, the intelligence consultancy TSG, and Appley. And he co-founded SecureBox, a counter-espionage project. That's a lot, Daniel. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
No, my pleasure to have you. So you co-founded the company with Mike Kott in early 2016. How did you two meet?
It's a funny story. I moved to Baltimore from New York, and I think I moved on a Thursday and then on a Saturday night at a mutual friend's house, I bumped into Mike and we started talking and never stopped talking. So we became friends and then really had shared experiences, personal experiences that we bonded over, and that really led to the start of the company.
Interesting. You know, I think one of the biggest challenges I have seen is co-founder breakup. So what is it that had you two feeling this was a match that you could walk down the aisle on and not get divorced?
Yeah. So I'd say what's really key is a lot of respect for the other person, and understanding that the decision that they make is just as good as the decision that you'd make, and having that trust and that respect. I'd say that's definitely been key for us, and also having different areas of focus. And what that enables us to do is really be often in two places at once that you couldn't as a individual CEO. Interestingly, Adam Grant writes in his book, The Originals, that companies with co-CEOs outperform companies with single CEOs. And there's multiple reasons for it, but it's a very, I say, counterintuitive piece. But it really does, it makes sense when you start thinking about it.
Well, and I imagine you have checks and balances when you're co-CEOs, right?
Yeah, I mean, in fact, you've got more checks and balances, because if you think about a single CEO, it's just one person making a decision. And then there's obviously the board and investors, but with us there are two people, and we get to really spend time, discussing big decisions, and you've got that benefit of two heads are better than one.
So what was the impetus behind Burnalong? How did you come up with it? And, you say that your approach is leading you to outperforming traditional wellness programs about 5 times, yeah?
Yeah, so what really led to the starting of the company was, unfortunately, shared experiences that Mike and I experienced with our grandmothers. To just tell you about my experiences, my grandmother was just like the closest person to me in the world, the most amazing woman. She died now just under 6 years ago. And for the last 10 or so years of her life, she had cancer and then a host of other health issues. And she went from being this just incredibly vivacious and life-loving person. Friends would describe her as the most fun person that they've ever met. And she was a person you wanted to be in any room with at any time, just an incredible amount of fun, and just a really good person. And then when the cancer came, it led to weight gain and depression, and got to the point where it was a struggle to get out of bed unless a family member came around.
Right.
And so the question that I had, and Mike was facing too, was why with today's technology, when you're at home and you most need the support of others, and the support can be the tailored programming that you need and the motivation to do it, or the social support of others, are you cut off from them? And then what happened is I was originally just starting to look for a solution, and we started speaking to doctors and hospitals and realized this was a struggle they were all facing with, is how do you get people engaged and keeping them on track and motivated when they're at home?
Yeah.
And then very quickly, companies came to us and said, look, this is the same problem that we're focused on as a company. The challenge for a company is not how do you get a 22-year-old with a six-pack exercising more. It's what about the rest of the population? And COVID has made things drastically worse. Even before COVID, when gyms and studios were opened, only 15% of the population goes to a gym or studio.
Yeah, that's how they make money. Gyms. Yeah. They count on you not coming.
Well, and that's the 15% that go.
Right.
The 85% of the population never goes in.
Right.
Forget about COVID, pre-COVID.
Right. Yeah.
80% of the population doesn't get the recommended levels of exercise.
Right.
40% of adults are dealing with obesity. And now in this country, it's about 20% of kids. So the question is, why aren't they doing programming, and how do you get them to do the programming? Because it's not as if people don't know that it's important to look after their health and wellness, right? We all go to our annual physicals with our doctors and told what to do, but people don't do it. And our insight and what we learned from very personal experiences was that a very, very different approach was needed, and our very, very different approach really works.
That's really amazing. And, and it's funny, I'm glad you mentioned COVID, because I would have to imagine that the growth you experienced in the last year and a half has been considerable.
Yeah, we were growing rapidly before COVID, because back to that point from a company perspective. So if you're a company with, whether it's 1,000 employees, 20,000 employees, 100,000 employees, and you start looking at the health of your workforce, and companies are increasingly focused on the health and the morale of their workforce.
Sure.
And you see that 80% of your workforce is not getting the recommended levels of exercise, and people are going on diabetes medication, or they're gaining weight, or they're getting depressed. You want to make a difference for those people in your company, and that's most of your company. So we, for really since 2016, have been focused on those people who aren't doing programming. What COVID taught, I'd say, is really two important lessons. The first is people who used to go to the gym and really used to focus on their health understood that for the rest of the population, just how challenging it often is to find the motivation to do programming when you're stuck at home. So you think about someone who is maybe a parent, and so in the evenings, maybe when they used to go to a gym, now they're putting their kids to bed. Or someone who is a senior and maybe no longer can drive, and so they can't make it to a gym or a studio. Now everyone understands just how challenging it is to find that motivation when you're on your own to do programming. So that is definitely a big shift that we've seen since COVID. The other big thing that COVID has taught everyone is you really need to approach health and wellness from a holistic perspective and include people's families.
Right.
So the big shift that we've seen from companies is you no longer are just going to tick a box and say, okay, we're offering some standard cardio and yoga classes that's really just geared towards the young and active. We're now understanding that we've got a diverse population. We need programming for people in their 40s and 50s and 60s and 70s, and people's parents who are in their 90s. We can't just have yoga and cardio. We need things, whether it's specialty programming, we need adaptive workouts for people with disabilities. We have to think about everyone, and we have to think about people's families. Because what COVID also taught is that no one operates in isolation. And if your family, whether it's children, parents, spouses, whoever your family is as you define it, if they are unhappy or unhealthy, that's going to affect your morale and your productivity as an employee.
Right.
So companies are really, the mindset of companies has definitely shifted. I would say credit to a lot of companies. They knew this 5 years ago, and they've been focused on this for a long time. For many people, though, COVID was a big wake up.
Well, I imagine. And it's almost like you were omniscient in some way, right? You could see the future that this was coming along. It's really very fascinating. So how do people, I know they can choose from many instructors. Are they like live classes that people are doing? Is it via webinar? How does it actually work and function? Paint me a picture.
Yeah, sure. So it's all through the Burnalong platform, and you can
Okay.
access Burnalong on the web or Android or iOS devices. So on your phone, tablet, computer, whatever you're comfortable doing. And you can choose from thousands of instructors teaching more than 13,000 classes, live or on demand, from across the country.
Okay.
And then the classes, you can do it on your own. Or if you want, you can invite others to join you live. So not strangers, but it can be a friend, a family member, a favorite coworker. So the reason, Carol, why at 9 o'clock at night you're going to show up to do that yoga class is not just relying on your own motivation, but maybe you've got your best friend from the other side of the country live with you on the screen, and she's saying, Carol, let's stretch and reach that extra bit higher to do that. And that's what it's all about. So our belief is that you're going to be more likely to do programming if we meet you where you are.
Right.
So someone who is 300 pounds and on diabetes medication is not necessarily going to be motivated by a 22-year-old with a six-pack.
Right.
But if you show them people on the screen who are at similar stages to them, they're going to do it. And what's interesting is you think about that philosophically, we instinctively know that, right? You think about what HR departments do. You're never going to put up a recruiting picture of 3 white 22-year-old men. But when it comes to wellness programming, somehow you think that's going to be motivating to your population. Right. It isn't.
It's so intimidating, in fact.
Exactly. It's off. Yeah. It is. It's off-putting because, you know what, Phil, you're never going to roll back the clock and look like you did when you're 22 years old.
Right.
And frankly, you don't have 6 hours a day to work out and work on your abs. So it's off-putting to people. And what we see is that when you cater programming to people, whether it's based on geography, their background, their needs, that's really what's motivating to people. They want authenticity.
Right.
And then number 2, when you layer in people's social support, if they want it, you're just more likely to do it.
Yeah.
I mean, just to share a story, one lady with Parkinson's disease, she told us that she's been doing Burnalong for several years. And her neurologist, her neurologist's credits says like the disease hasn't progressed as he thought it would have. And credits like the programming that she's been doing. And there's a lot of research out there that shows that exercise can slow the progression of the disease. But then you ask her, like, why is she doing the programming? It's she's seeing people on the screen with Parkinson's disease, maybe more advanced than her. And that's motivating her to do it. And then number 2, she's got her grandchildren live with her. So that motivation of seeing your grandchildren on the screen and the grandchildren motivating their grandmother, that's reminding you why you're fighting and why you want to live and why you want to battle the disease. So that's the combination what makes it so effective. And it's incredible for us because what's unique about the Burnalong platform in many ways is our youngest users are 6 weeks old. We've got mummy and me classes.
Yeah.
Before that, we got prenatal programming. We've got, on the other end, people in their 90s with different chronic conditions or MS or Parkinson's disease doing programming. And in between, we've got people who go to the gym 5 days a week, but their favorite instructor is on Burnalong and they want to do that during the other 2 days a week for them. But everyone is within one community. And so rather than people feeling, okay, well, if you're in a wheelchair, you have to go here. And if you're battling diabetes, you have to go here. And this platform is just for people who are in amazing shape and want to do cardio. This is one platform for everyone. And when companies or families think about inclusivity and motivation, that's incredibly powerful for people all to be on one platform.
You know, I this is really fantastic. And I think that I probably say it on practically every podcast interview, but one of the common denominators among successful startups is always finding a problem that needs to be solved and understanding that it's about the customer, client, user, whoever that person is. right? When you're a client or customer-centric company, it's all about them. And what I'm hearing from you is that's exactly what you've built.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
It is about, there is a huge need for people, and then tailoring that to actually what their need is.
I love it. I love it. I love it. And, as somebody who was a bodybuilder in my earlier days, and spent a lot of time alone last year, it was hard for me. I wish I'd known about this, frankly, last year. So you have taken, since your founding, about 14 million in capital. This could be redundant based on the conversation, but what has your investors so excited about Burnalong? Everything we've talked about already?
Yeah, it's everything that we talk about. And I say fundamentally, it's how this is changing lives on a global scale. Because exactly what you said a second ago is, this is like a clear need for people. It's a clear need for companies. It's a clear need for hospitals. It's a clear need for individuals. And I think for investors, it's very much the dual piece. And I think especially our investors is, they see it as a tremendous business. But more deeply than that, or just as importantly as that from their perspective, is they're seeing the difference that it makes in people's lives. When you hear the stories from people whose lives this has changed, whether it's a lady who discovered she had a lump because she started losing weight, or an individual as part of our partnership with the YMCAs who was at risk of being pre-dementia, and they got taken off that at-risk category. Whether it's that person with Parkinson's disease, who the disease isn't progressing, or it's that new mother who's just had a baby and is now trying to balance this huge upheaval in her life of not being able to do the routine that she used to do, not being able to go to her usual class because she's now got a baby that needs to be fed at that time.
Right.
Bridging that gap for people and keeping them on track and just frankly changing their lives. So I say that's the huge motivator for investors and for the team, why they are part of the company. We've got an amazing team of individuals, all of whom have in their mind people or multiple people for whom Burnalong could have made a huge difference in their lives if it'd been around when they needed it.
Sure.
Or for whom it is making a huge difference right now. And that's what motivates us as a company, our team, and our investors as well.
So is the problem with traditional wellness programs, Daniel, because they're not customized to the individual, as your platform is?
I think the problem with traditional programs is the fact that it's only utilized by a small segment of the population. That is the challenge. It's great for the people who utilize them, but back to that case of, if you're a 55-year-old who's 300 pounds and on diabetes medication, being shown one of 40,000 different fitness programs, all of whom are showing you 22-year-olds with six packs,
right,
and wonder why that's not going to